The only copywriter I know who started out as a comedian, as opposed to the many copywriters who think they're comedians, but they're not. This guy is truly a funny guy, a comedian, and a great copywriter and a great teacher. Kevin Rogers, it's been so long since we had you on the show. Welcome back.
And Ray, it is great to be back and great to be seeing you and talking to you, my friend.
Now, I know you tell a story of how you went from copywriting or from comedy to copy. I want to come back to comedy in just a moment.
Well, I was in between. I quit comedy, which was really hard thing to do because it's all I knew. It was the only job I'd really had in my adult life. I spent about almost 10 years relying on it for my income. And then when I knew I couldn't exist on the road anymore, I was doing odd jobs. I call them no resume jobs. I was a bellhop at a hotel. I had bartended in Chicago, and then we moved to Florida. And I thought, oh, Chicago bartender, everybody's going to hire me.
It's like you took the Stephen Pressfield route.
Yeah. It turns out in Florida, unless you're a bleach blonde and young, they don't want you behind the bar. So that was out. And I was just I was shuttling flight crews back and forth from the hotel to the airport. I mean, it was really menial work. No offense to anybody who's in that occupation. I'll tell you what though, Ray, doing those kinds of jobs, like being a bellhop, for instance, I learned a lot about kind of hustling. I'm not a hustler by nature, but you realize things like it isn't the tip you get for bringing someone's bags to the room that makes you money. It's the elevator ride up to the room where you find out why they're in town, what they want to do while they're here, whether it's a family or a lonely salesperson. You can help them have a good time, especially here in Florida. And money comes from all directions when you put people places they want to go, right? And so some interesting early lessons.
Well, it's about making connections, right? Joe Polish talks about it in his book, What's in It for Them. He talks about connecting people cross network, not just necessarily just to help your own self, but to help them relieve their own suffering. You're talking about that lonely person on the road or the family. That's what you're really talking about, isn't it?
Exactly right. Yeah. It's like, what do they want? Discount tickets to a park or, a better room for a family than the one they booked. And I can tell them they can get a cheaper one up the road at the condo suites and, whatever it is, restaurants. And so that was eye-opening and interesting. And then long story short, a guy that I never wanted to be friends with again, because I knew him from comedy and I didn't quite like him too much then. I didn't like his character. He'd actually stolen money from me. It was just a bucket. Gosh. It was a bucket of change is all it was. But I was letting him stay at my house while I was on the road. And I came back and all this money was gone. And anyway, he got sober later and you know what he did? He collected change until he could hand me back what he had taken from me, which I thought was really inspiring. And, and then so years later, I come back to Florida and he's running a business. It was a timeshare resale business, very shady industry for a lot of people in the satellite of it. He was trying to do it right. And he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I was making very little money, had my first kid. And he said, I have a room full of phone dogs in there who all know how to run my business.
Phone dogs.
Phone dogs. And I because it was a call center.
Yeah.
And he said, I wouldn't trust any one of them as far as I could throw them. He said, you don't know anything about my business, but I would trust you with my life. He said, so I will pay you more than you're making right now just to come show up here and sit next to me and learn about what I do. And then we'll see if there's anything to do from there. So I ended up working for him. 3 months later, he threw me the keys to the company and said, my doctor said, if I don't take a break, I'm going to have a heart attack. And so I'm going on the road. I got some gigs. Okay, man. And then he tripled my pay. So I was really stuck there. Nice. And man, I tell you what, it taught me about first of all, it taught me about sales and marketing. It taught me about compliance, because that was my main job, was monitoring how they were pitching on the floor. And it was my job to protect and defend our BBB rating. And I was managing the sales floor all of a sudden. And, we're talking about people who always want an advance and had to learn how to say no, and why it's important to say no. And man, a lot of great lessons. And then through that, a guy named Chris Tomasulo, who you might know.
Yeah.
Doc Sulo, was hired there to consult, to create an inbound call channel. And watching him work, man, was like really inspiring. He's brilliant, and it was really successful. And he's the one who said to me, I know you love to write. You're starting to get this marketing thing a little bit. You should think about becoming a copywriter. What is that? He showed me a sales letter. I thought it was the dumbest, ugliest thing I ever saw in my life. Back in the really ugly letter days, with all the highlighting and the.
Well, Doc Sulo was he was on Planet Dan, wasn't he? Was he one of Dan's acolytes?
Yeah, he was plugged in with everybody. I remember him trying to get Bobby to hire Harlan Kilstein to write a sales letter for him. Bobby couldn't see it was like $5,000 or something. Bobby's like, I've never paid somebody that much to write a letter. And so anyway, then he turned me on to Halbert. He turned me on to, this is right at the end of Gary's life, and Carlton and Ben Savenga and guys like you. And it was just like, okay, I get that this can be done in a really cool way, and fell in love with it. And that was it.
Yeah. Gary Halbert, what a legend. And I met him, but I was so nervous. I only got to meet him one time. It was at a Frank Kern and Ed Dale seminar in California. And I went up, I was so tongue tied. All I could say was, thank you. I just wanted to thank him for the education I'd gotten. I remember when I was a kid, we got the coat of arms letter at my house. My dad actually bought the coat of arms.
Me too.
Yeah. Just
what an amazing same experience. Yeah.
What an amazing guy. What an amazing story.
Yeah.
Still learn from him if you can get his letters online. Gary Halbert letter.
Yeah. Incredible.
And so anyway, interrupted your story, your flow. So
no, that's all right. That was kind of it. And then, it was just this process from there. It cracks me up, Ray. I was reading somebody's post on Facebook the other day, and he was talking about how back when he started in 2015, there were no courses, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about, man?
What planet were you on, dude?
And I'm like, because literally when I started, there was one course, the AWAI course, which, anybody who's been around a minute was usually their first course. And then there was nothing. And I had to, Clayton had the blog and even then, man, I would get overwhelmed. Like I remember when I was first doing projects, I'd be halfway through a sales letter and I'd read something somebody wrote on Clayton's blog, and it would teach me a new tactic, and, it just like light up your brain. And I'd think, I got to start this letter over, because if I don't include this, I'm not doing my best work. And I was like, I got to stop this cycle. It's taken me twice as long to write and this is in 2005.
Yeah.
And so obviously now everybody has the opposite problem of like, you can't go 10 seconds without somebody else telling you, you got to do it this way. And so it's and that was it, man. Just fighting through the, journey of freelancing and making all the mistakes. And
so you wrote a lot of product launch campaigns.
Yeah.
Right?
Launches. Yeah. ClickBank was where I kind of started with all those BizOppy guys. Didn't like that. Met some good people, but for the most part,
there's a lot of dreck in there.
Yeah. And so, but then I started writing for some fitness guys. And I thought, okay, this is a different crowd. These guys are really smart. And they were just had a lot more integrity. Guys like Tom Venuto and Vince Del Monte and people like that. And so I was able to kind of shift my world a little bit, and things got much better. But
all right. So how did you go from that era to Copy Chief? How did Copy Chief come about? Explain what Copy Chief is, first of all.
Sure. Yeah.
What is a Copy Chief?
Okay. Right. Yeah. I always think I should explain that part more. A Copy Chief is the person in a marketing company who's in charge of the copywriters and oversees all the copy. And so usually it's the best copywriter in the company. And then when they need more copywriters, they build teams around their best writers, and they're the chief. And so, in the Agora model, you'll be part of a chief's team, and you'll be doing everything from writing collateral and like on a daily basis, but you also be pitching promo ideas and writing bigger promos in the background. And that's where you really dig in with the chief and suss out big ideas and, the iterative process of getting a sales letter, something like right. So it's ready to film as a VSL and launch.
I like the phrase something like right. That's it, right? It's all an approximation until it gets in front of customers.
Oh man, I just finished one this morning, and honestly, it's the first time I've spent that long on a sales letter, and it was really invigorating and exciting. But now I got 6 days or something until I find out what's up. But so that's what a copy chief does, and the reason copychief.com is a community of copywriters of all experience levels and business owners and marketers. And we all come together to share the best stuff that's working. And, I think of it, what it is now is a place to get away from all the noise that's everywhere. And, at least have one place where, who's saying what. They're responsible to the community. You can see their name, their profile. You could contact them. They're not there to put on a show. They're there to get better. Everybody's there to get better and learn from each other. And the reason I launched it in 2014 was because I was seeing these amazing relationships form at conferences, right? I'm sure you've seen this a million times, right? Where you go to a conference, day one, some people are meeting. By like day 3, you see like people forming relationships. And I'd always see a copywriter connect with a company owner or a marketer, and they would be talking about, okay, we're going to work together. Then you see them 6 months later or a year later, and they had done so well together. And I thought it's a shame that this is kind of the only place that goes on. What if there was a digital world where I could recreate this kind of loose, fun, open party and let people have these conversations 24/7. And the only form around back then was warrior form. And it was just not, not where I was going to send anybody or hang out.
Yeah.
Keyword war. And so I kind of modeled it on, I'm sure you remember Michael Fortin's board.
I remember it well. Yeah.
I mean, I think we probably met the first time there, and that's where that place changed my life. I mean, talk about that gap between having the AWI course and then Vin Montello introduced me to that world. And I was like, oh man, I grew so fast and I learned so much, and I made connections, got my first client there. And I was like, man, our world needs something like this again. And so that's what I set out to build, and just kept growing from there.
Dang, that's so cool. So we'll have a link to this in the show notes, but it's copychief.com.
That's it. Yep.
Now let's circle back to the comedy thing.
Okay.
So I know you were out of comedy for a long time, but you've recently gotten back into it. Is that right?
I did. It's been a little while now, but it was before pandemic. It was 2015 when I actually started again, because all for one show. My best friend in the world is a guy named Billy Gardell. He's an actor. He's currently on a show called Bob Hart's Abishola on CBS. He was previously on, and they're in their 4th season, which is incredible for any sitcom, let alone this day and age. Before that, he was on a show called Mike and Molly with Melissa McCarthy. They went, I think, 4 seasons. And so Billy's, was Mike. And so Billy was still touring then, and I was visiting him and out in LA, and he said to me, I'm coming to St. Pete. I'm doing Mahaffey Theater. He goes, why don't you open for me? I go, oh man, that's nice of you. But no way, dude. I've been away for like 12 years. I mean, I wouldn't know how to write a joke. He's like, oh dude, he's like, just do a couple sets, dust yourself off. And I was like, and then, so I said no. And then I thought about it. I thought, what does it mean to have your own business if you can't take a friend up on an opportunity like that to perform in front of 2,000 people, which I never got to do when I was doing stand up, it was all clubs and stuff. And so I called him back and said, Bill, if it's still open, I'm taking it, man. I'll do it. And then I had 6 weeks to write 30 minutes of material. And I was a completely different person, needless to say. I went from kind of being a long-haired hippie stoner kid, and those were my jokes, to now being a bald family guy with a business and a very different perspective on life. So needless to say, a lot of the old stuff was no use to me. And went on this amazing journey. And then, it really made it scary, man. Like I told Paris Lampropoulos about it. And next day text me, he's like, hey man, I just booked my ticket and I'm flying in. I'm like, whoa, what?
No.
Like, oh, what are you doing?
Do you have a chance to try any of this material out before the show, or
barely?
Just go in cold?
No, the only way to develop stand-up materials in front of a crowd. The funny thing was, the one club I could get on pretty much anytime I wanted was a little club on the beach that only holds 80 people and typically would have a crowd of as little as 6 or on average 15, 20 people. And so I'm practicing, like 20 is a good night. You're like, wow, you can actually kind of get a roll of laughter going in this room tonight. But 6 was their cutoff. If they had less than 6 people, they wouldn't do a show. And I'm telling you,
at least they had standards.
Yeah. And here's how crazy comics are. If there were 4, they'd be like, come on, let's just do this show literally for 4 people. And so practicing in front of, a handful of people to prepare to perform for 2,000 people, which was not a very accurate portrayal of what I was gearing up for.
So you're practicing material in this small venue with a few people, and then you go to this 2,000 person venue. How did the show go? It
went well. Didn't hurt that I had, it was probably, at the end of the day, 20, 25 people had flown in, or Marcella Allison came in. Just incredible. So it was a big party. I was, really nervous. But once I got out there, it was fine. A couple jokes in, it feels like a normal set. Everybody kept warning me, you're not gonna kill as hard as you want to, because they're there to see the headliner. It's just how it is when you're opening. And I was like, but they were right. It's like, and everybody kept warning me. The other thing was like, beware of your timing, because in a theater, you say the joke, the laughter like rolls, and then finally, by the time it makes it back to you, it's just different than in a club. And then I'm like, how come that's not happening? Well, up there, I'm like, I'm not experiencing that problem. I guess I'm not killing too hard,
man.
But
I admire that you do that, because I've always wanted to, but I've never been brave enough, because it's like it's sink or swim time, live or die time, right?
Man. Yeah, there's no hiding. There's no hiding on a comedy stage. And, just the audacity to look like everybody else in the building. And then somebody says your name and you walk up and you grab the mic and you're promising that you're about to make them double over with laughter just by saying words, telling stories. It's really audacious. It's amazing that it's still an art form and such a successful one. And people who are great at it are mind-blowing. To watch the real masters of the craft. I'm always in awe of it. I was good. I had some really good sets, but I think, it was a good way to spend my 20s. I don't feel like I missed the boat or anything, by not sticking with it.
Do you see a lot of crossover between comedy and copywriting?
Oh yeah, so much. Just 100 parallels, from having to win over strangers quickly, to holding and keeping attention, to building suspense, to keeping tension, to be daring enough to tell a longer story with not a lot of laughs up until the punchline. All those things. Yeah, I'll tell you what, the greatest gift it gave me as a writer is, writing is one thing. And especially copywriting to me is really one thing. It is a two-way conversation held from one side. And the best copy does a really good job of anticipating the thoughts of the reader, and yes, guiding them in other things. But I think you have to also respect what your reader might be thinking. And you can't answer every question or objection in real time. You just have to hope that they're willing to come on this ride with you. And standing in front of live people and having that experience for 10 years helped me develop a really good instinct for what my audience hopefully is experiencing on the other side.
It's so important, because if you don't have that connection with your audience as a copywriter, you lose them, and they're done. They clicked away. They're finished. They're not even thinking about you anymore. They don't have to. It's not like in a comedy club even, where they have to get up, either heckle you or walk out. They just click, vanish.
Which is uncomfortable for them, and they're rooting for you because they paid. They showered. They paid to come in. They've done all this work.
I used mouthwash, man. Come on.
They've invested. I mean, online, forget about it. It's like I do this too. I keep my finger, I call it the finger of death, right? Over the mouse or over the trackpad. And I'm just like, please let me out of here. And if the copy can force me to stay, I'm applauding halfway through it. But everybody's goal is to get out.
One of the first times I really drew any parallel between comedy and copy was because I heard Dan Kennedy talking about one of his friends, clients, mentors. I don't know exactly how he looked at her. It was Joan Rivers, who kept this card catalog of jokes.
Yeah.
And it struck me, this is like a swipe file.
Yeah. But by the way, I don't know if you saw it. I think it was on Showtime or HBO, called Hacks. Did you happen to see that series?
No.
You got to check it out. It's clearly based on Joan Rivers. It really well acted and shows this process really well. But yes, it is like a swipe file. And, to this day, Ray, I have on a note file on my phone for joke ideas, just because they come to me sometimes, and, I don't want to lose them. And so, I think, now it's happening to me with email. I just took over all my copy again for Copy Chief. And, this happens, and people talk about this. Like, if, when you have to write, I don't write a daily email, but when you write frequently and have to, especially with email at the beginning, you're like, how am I ever going to come up with enough ideas to stay interesting?
Yeah.
Once you get going, what happens, right? You can't
stop them.
Can't stop the ideas. And so now I have a couple of files, and I try not to lose them, because you're not going to remember them. You think you will, they're gone.
Absolutely. And the key is catching the right phrase out of that idea that'll evoke it again when you see it in the future.
Exactly.
Rather than sometimes I put notes in my idea file, and I'm like, what the hell was that supposed to be? That makes no sense.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you've gone from being a one-man show, literally, to being a freelance copywriter, to running a business. What have you learned evolutionarily going through that process? Now that you're running a business, you've got employees, you got a whole operation to run. Has that taught you different lessons?
I mean, so many. It really is kind of the most invigorating thing now. It's funny because getting back to what I originally loved and falling in love with again, writing sales letters, copy for my own business now, which I always have, but now the business has evolved to where I have more space for that now. But man, I tell you, the biggest thing I've learned is that it's a long game, in that reputation and network and longevity are, man, if you can get to them, are a true gift. You and I will never go hungry, Ray. We've been doing this a long time. We both have good reputations. I don't say that with ego. I just say it with, I'm just, I guess I feel blessed that I'm the kind of person, but that's my natural mode. I'm not saying like I'm this great guy, but we see a lot of shady people in our industry. And I'm always like, I know. I see your Lambo now, bro. But
Wait till the repo man comes and gets it. It'll
yeah,
be a different story.
yeah. It's, it cannot be all about the money, and there's this longevity thing. People remember, and people come back around in ways that you don't expect.
Yeah.
And so many things that happen in my business now, and for me now, the way it manifests is being able to place other copywriters in great jobs most of the time, and that's a great win for me and my community and the company. It's just the greatest win I can create. And so many times I see people posting on Facebook, they're looking for copywriters or in one of these free groups. And I write to them and I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, this is going to be a nightmare. And they're like, oh God, how did I forget about you? And then I'm like, come on, let's do this right. And next thing you know, I got 3-4 copywriters on their team, and they're, everybody's happy. And if it wasn't for all those years and all that history and reputation, they wouldn't know who I am, and so it's pretty cool.
It's all about what you said earlier, playing the long game.
Yeah.
And now, now you're doing what Fortin did for us when we were getting started. You're connecting them with the right people, and in a community where there's people really doing this as a profession and not just as a way to squeeze some money out of folks.
Yeah.
It is. There was a long time where you couldn't have told me it's not all about the money, because I wanted the money.
Yeah.
But you learn as you progress, it's about so much more. It's the reputation, the connections, and the impact you have on the world around you. And if you're playing for the long term, you're never going to take those shortcuts that hurt you later on.
That's right. Yeah. Well said. That's exactly right.
You're never going to steal the change bucket out of your buddy's house.
Yeah. And hope that he's good with you giving it back to him 6 years later, Yeah. It's, that's exactly right. And what's great about getting older, I'll be 53 in next week, is man, I just love being this age now. You just have this extra bit of understanding. I don't get upset anymore. There's no drama in my life. We get to
a point where it's like, it's not worth the drama.
Yeah.
Whatever payoff I got from the drama, I don't get that anymore.
Yeah. If there's drama, I did something wrong usually. Like I reacted in the wrong way. We got hacked. Our Facebook account somehow got hacked through one of our ad managers. Their computer, I don't know how it happened yet, but $36,000 in phony ad spend, right? And so all of a sudden, 2 days ago, these charges come through our account. We catch it, figure out what happened, file a police report. And dude, like it took 30 minutes of my day to go, okay, and that's having a team, but also being of a certain age and where you go, okay, whatever.
This is what we're doing now.
It's what we're doing right now, and when I see people going Facebook and they're ranting all about some way they've been wrong, and it's like, man, is this helping? Is this helping you? Is not helping me think about you any better? Look, I can help other people be aware and things, but process your stuff, man.
So well said. You look pretty good for a man of a certain age.
Thanks, brother. The beard dye helps, I think. Shout out to Simpler, the all natural just for men, because that was burning my face off. But
that's not good. That's not a good look.
No, that wasn't helping at all. I didn't know you had a red beard. No, that's my skin. So yeah, you know how it is. We all try to stay active. I think that's the thing, right?
Yep, for sure. So if folks want to catch up with you at Copy Chief, they can just go to copychief.com. Is there any other URLs or propaganda sites you send people to?
I'd love for them to check out my podcast, maybe subscribe there if they like.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If you like the sound of my dulcet tones, and if you appreciate what Ray does here, I think you'll also like the conversation. I'm a lot like Ray. I like to just have great conversations with people who are doing cool stuff, and I think that's more interesting than 10 tips or something. And so I really enjoy doing that. And yeah, the community is it's good because it's paid. You know what? One thing I figured out, Ray, well, like, remember how Fortin's board ended?
Yeah, I do.
It just overnight, he shut it down because he
Just
was
had
said
enough.
it was getting crazy and people were fighting and there were these and it's like, it just became this unhappy place. And he woke up one day and he posted and he said, this is not why I started this. I am not going to spend my time breaking up fights. It's done. And everybody's like, everybody was like, can I get my stuff? I have so much, like hundreds of posts in here that I could be using.
I remember it made me very sad, but I totally understood why he did it.
Yeah, me too. And so that's why my community's paid and it's affordable, but that keeps out the trolls. Trolls do not pay to troll. That's one thing I've learned. You know what I mean? And so if you put up a little bit of a gate, it keeps everybody in line.
And everybody's happy then.
Yeah.
Or at least polite.
At least polite. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, man. I love the work you do.
Thank you, friend. Yeah, I appreciate you very much. You're an inspiring man, and I'm glad to know you, Ray.